a staff member, connecting to excellence, growing in excellence, and reaching for excellence. And then we had these indicators that we went back and revamped to say, when we talk about leadership in this organization, this is what we expect everyone to think and act like. And it says, from the boardroom to the classroom, everyone is a leader. Everyone is a leader. So we start big picture, the portrait of excellence, shift here, leading towards excellence, where everyone's a leader. And then we take our strategic priorities. So there were 10 strategic priorities in the past. And as we looked at the data, we began to narrow that down to say, how do we begin to combine our expectations and where we want to be into 4, 5, maybe 6 strategic priorities, and we landed on 5. So the first one is around exemplary student outcomes, and it is listed first by design. We want to make sure that our focus is on students first. Our statement of purpose here is to focus on academic outcomes with a strong start and a strong finish for all students. What we do in Head Start and pre-K will impact what happens all the way through the system. So we looked at the data and said, given the data, what will our performance outcomes be? Where will our focus be around student outcomes? And there were several areas. One is around a research-based K-12 literacy framework. So we know we teach reading and writing in our schools. When we look at the data and how students are progressing through the system, meaning are they reading and writing on grade level every single year? The data tells us that not every student is progressing at expected levels. And so literacy is going to become a big piece of our work. And what this means is we're going to take our fabulous 5, phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, start with those, and then add all the other components, guided reading, level libraries, everything that a research-based program should have, and ensure that from campus to campus, it remains consistent with how we roll that out. What does it look like at this campus, this campus, and this campus across grade levels, and standardize that district-wide. We've already started that work. We're going to roll out most of it during the summer, but that's a big focus area. The second one is around numeracy, the math. So reading and writing first, and then we shift to math. Again, it's taking the K-12 numeracy concept and ensure that as students progress through the system, they're moving through the system on grade level and mastering the knowledge and skills that are expected of them. When we start this summer, we know if you look at the mathematical strands from NCTM, the national standards, number operations is first, problem solving is last. And what we're saying is we're going to start with those 2, number operations. If you can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you can't do mathematics, any other portion of mathematics, so to speak, right? Those are the basics. And then problem solving is the other bookend. So we're starting with those and then moving through the framework to develop each of the other mathematical strands. And that work has already started. Another big piece is to create systems to eliminate performance gaps among student groups. So whether you're a special ed student, whether you're a bilingual student, whatever your student group is, the goal here is to ensure that all students are performing at high levels. We need that to happen. And then we have perform at or above state averages in each tested content. Goes back to our A through F system. We know that the state's going to measure us that way. We're going to use the state as initial benchmarks and then begin to expand on that and set higher benchmarks, because that shouldn't be where we need to be. We want to be much higher than that, but that's a starting point for us in the first year. And then ensure students graduate with their cohort and achieve their AND. So with their cohort means when they start 9th grade, they should be graduating 4 years later. We want to make sure that they have the credits to progress through the system and graduate in 4 years. Not 5, not 6, because that's allowable. They still measure that as graduates. But we want four-year graduates and achieve their AND meaning, and they obtain an industry-based certification while they're with us. Our focus is really going to be on the college side as well, while maintaining our career side, because we've improved significantly on the career side. On the college side, we have some room to grow. Increase overall attendance and decrease chronic absenteeism. We know that if students aren't sitting in classrooms, they're not getting the instruction. So we're going to continue to work on that. And then this is another big one for us. Excuse me. Expand and improve dual credit, advanced placement, and associate's degrees. Last year we had 2 students graduate with associate's degrees. We should have a lot more. Now we have students earning college credits, some with 42 core, and we're going to celebrate those. Let's also push for associate's degrees where they walk away with those 60 hours. So this is a big emphasis for us, and we're already having conversations with VC to make sure that that's happening. So you might ask, so how's this all going to happen? 2 big strategies for us on the academic side is we have an academic playbook, and we have our instructional priorities. We've already started to work that work. So our academic playbook is actually this. It has 8 components, and campuses we've already rolled it out with principals in its early phases. This summer we're going to stamp it. Every one of these indicators has its own metrics to measure how we're doing as a campus. So instructional leadership teams is first. They meet weekly, and they're looking at data, assessing walkthrough data and what's happening in classrooms. They're looking at benchmark assessments, CBAs, all those things. And that leadership team every week is working the work. And we have metrics to measure that. They have school plans where they set goals. What are our goals going to be in each of our content areas for CTE, etc., attendance, behavior, and what does that look like every week? They're monitoring that to make sure we're on track. We also have vetted and aligned diagnostics, whether you were in reading in kindergarten or you were in CTE, one of the classrooms. What are those diagnostics that we're using to determine whether students are measuring the knowledge and skills that are expected? And so we go all the way around the system. I won't go through all of it. What I'll tell you is we've already started to roll this out. This will be our academic playbook. It is vetted, tested, true. I know it works. Principals have already embraced it, and we're running with it. The second piece to this takes every one of those components. It talks about the key actions and the results that we should expect if we implement that. I won't go into detail, but what I'll tell you is this is the playbook. It's going to happen, and it works. So I talked about the playbook. I talked about the literacy framework, the numeracy framework, expanding CTE programs of study. We're already moving from 18 programs of study to 23. 18 to 23. And even of the 18 that were already developed, there are course sequences, right? And you'll know the coherent sequence of courses. We went back and aligned some of those courses so that they made sense and were logical in how students were progressing, because we have to have the completers as we move forward this next year. Dual credit, advanced placement, and associate degree, we talked about that. Rigor, relevance, and engagement, that's a big one for us. And then focused acceleration, interventions, and support systems. Who needs what, and how do we know? We should know every student by name and need, and we should be addressing them through acceleration, interventions, or support systems to make sure that they're progressing. So those are big ideas around student outcomes. Questions, I've said a lot. So let me stop just for a minute. Questions?
Is there anywhere I can get those slides?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So then we get to strategic priority number 2. So the first one was students by design. The second one is staff. And it's ensuring that we have empowered staff, that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the disposition to work with students to ensure that they're progressing as expected. So here the purpose is to cultivate a highly effective workforce. This isn't just about being certified, it's about what kind of impact is every single staff member having with students. Not just certification, impact is what we want to know. And then with exemplary leadership skills, through intentional growth and development where people know they're valued. We value our people. We will be people-centric. We are people-centric. You can't do this work without people. So our performance outcomes here are to expand and improve recruitment and retention strategies. In fact, we talked about it in cabinet this morning and have our plan already ready to go. To address campus and department needs. To increase capacity through professional development and learning opportunities. I don't know if you saw the advocate on, was it yesterday? The second? Yes. And it said the big launch. And it said, summer's already decided, administrators will not have a break. Those are my words, but that's basically what it said. What I was telling the advocate is we have our summer professional development plan already developed. We're finalizing it. There will be big institutes this summer where we launch a lot of the work that we're talking about. And so the advocate had an article yesterday about that. Last one, to enhance recognition processes that affirm staff as valued members of our people-centered organization. I can't say it enough. We can't do this work without people. We value people. Empowered staff is the second one. Then we get into students, staff, classrooms. And this is about ensuring that we have safe and innovative learning environments to inspire learners and leverage their strengths. What you'll see embedded here is safety, digital fluency, innovative programs like CTE, etc. And those are going to be the big ones that we're going to focus on. And so the first performance outcome is around making sure that students and staff are secure, safe and secure from external and internal threats. You might say, what's an internal threat? An internal threat might be a bully, discipline issues, those kinds of things. Implement positive discipline and behavior initiatives to instill citizenship readiness skills. I'm going to tie that to the next slide in just a minute. Integrate technology skills to ensure students are successful in the digital world. This isn't simply about a Chromebook. I went into your class, Mr. Sexton. What did I see with technology in your class?
Hopefully the industry standard. Like
Absolutely, yes. Just did a podcast in his classroom, and it's industry standard. So they're using all the technology that they would need as they transition out into the real world. In science, probes. In math, graphing calculators, and just taking it to the next level to say, what kind of technology do our students need so that when they leave here, they have those experiences that support them as they transition either into college or into careers. And then the last one is about innovative learning environments and pathways to meet the needs of all learners. As I said, we're expanding our programs of study, creating those pathways that are very clear. And it could be fine arts as well, right, Mr. Edge?
Absolutely.
Any kind of pathway that we're talking about. Questions about number 3? All right, strategic priority number 4. Well, before I leave that, so I was talking about being citizenship ready. This is another piece that we're rolling out, and it's part of our citizenship ready plan. We're not calling it a discipline plan. These 10 VISD values will be in every classroom, in every bus, in every home, we imagine, just everywhere. And this is what we're expecting of staff and students, how we think and act. And so if you take a moment and look at those, it starts with excellence, because excellence is our thread, but really saying, these are the things that we want to see our staff members do, and then they're going to be embedded in the handbook, the employee handbook, the student handbook, student code of conduct, etc., and part of our citizenship ready plan. We will see these everywhere. All right, so we get to priority number 4 is authentic partnerships. This is about strengthening systems and relationships that result in partnerships, authentic partnerships, collaboration and shared responsibilities that benefit students. We put together a spreadsheet that outlines all of our partners, and we have way over 100 partners that work with us in VEHS, and we're so grateful, and we have a plan for acknowledging all those really soon. What we're talking about here also is what kind of partnerships can we establish that benefit students, internships, paid internships or not paid, etc., and looking for different experiences that would build on the college and career notions that we're talking about. So here it's about collaborating with community partners to integrate resources and expertise into educational programs and initiatives that enhance student learning and success. Strengthening a robust network of community support for resources, mentorship, and enrichment opportunities for kids. And then utilizing communication systems that are collaborative, timely, proactive, and consistent to meet the needs of all stakeholders. And so we're expanding. We do a lot of digital, social media, and digital communication. We're taking a step back, and it may sound a little primitive, but it's not. It's by design. To also say, while we're also getting all that information out, we're going to do some some print communication as well. So we have 3 district digests that are going to go out 3 times a year. And at the end of the year, we're also going to create an annual performance report that explains to the community how we performed and why across areas, on the academic side, on the finance side, on the operations side, etc. So there'll be an annual report that culminates at the end of the year, but we want to get print copies into households as well. Not everyone has Facebook and all those other social media platforms. They just don't. All right, and then the last one is around operational excellence. Ensure that short and long-term planning comprehensively anticipate and address district needs and maximize our resources. We're going to utilize financial management practices to maintain fiscal accountability and build on that. We're very strong as a district financially, although there are some areas where we need support, and I'll just tell you, on the facility side, we don't have a budget that supports providing all the repairs, et cetera, that we need to for our facilities. So what does that look like? And then a big priority for us is also increasing teacher pay. The bottom line is that's where we want to go. So financial management is one. Maximize available resources to maintain facilities, equipment, and transportation vehicles. I'll address this one at the end a little bit with the 6 plans that we're developing. And then review and refine the efficiency and effectiveness of operational systems to support student learning. We've already started unpacking all of that, doing the analysis, and determining where we need to go with some of these things. So that 5th one is around operational excellence. That's the last of the priorities. So you see we start with students, staff, classroom, partners, and then the overall operational system as a district. Every one of those is in the right order by design. All right, so we get here, talked about these 2 just a little bit. What we have right now is the 89th legislature is in session. A challenge for us is what's on the table right now with teacher pay is $2,500 for regular school districts. $5,000 is what they're looking at if you're 5,000 or less students. So every district around us gets the $5,000. Our district gets $2,500. So what did we do? We just created a wider gap, which is why we're looking at how do we begin analyzing our resources and making decisions about what needs to happen so that we can, at some point soon, look at teacher pay. We also hope that we're going to get funds that we need from the special ed side. We're using 100% of our operating costs in special ed when the reality is all we have to use is 55%, and we could use the other 45% otherwise. We can't. We have to use every single dollar on the special ed side because that's where our funding is right now. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at, safety funding, those kinds of things. It's just There's a lot that we're gonna look at and figure out how we begin to prioritize based on the plan that we're creating. So what's the process? Just to show you, we're right here with the VISD strategic plan. Based on those 5 priorities, the board will develop our board goals, and they should be aligned, student outcomes, staff, etc. You see the alignment. Then we develop the VISD action plan, which we've already started, and it's in draft form at this point, and the department work plan. So how do we work the work with the literacy framework, the numeracy framework, etc. We have to work the work on all those pieces. Then we develop the district improvement plan, which filters down to the campuses to develop the campus improvement plans. So there's this whole process, and it's all aligned to make sure, starting with our strategic priorities all the way down to the campus plans. The feedback that we received from the team so far is this alignment is very clear and very streamlined, where it's all just beginning to fall into place. This is the action. I'm going to go back to this part right here, which is the VISD action plan. Without a plan, you're planning to fail. We know that, right? And so what we've started to do is, this is the first of like 10 pages. We take every priority, the statement of purpose, the outcomes, and then what are our strategic actions, what are our key performance indicators, that was one of them on the first slide, right? And then what key progress measures will we use to measure those and make sure that we're meeting those KPIs over time. Now, the department plans follow this, so they detail out the level of work that needs to happen around each one of these areas. We have 6 large, bigger priority plans that we're also working on. So the academic improvement plan, you saw pieces of it on that first page. The personnel right sizing plan. So what we're doing, and we're starting at the district level, is looking at all central office staff to determine every position, the functions, and whether we're overstaffed in any way to start our right sizing. And we're starting at the district level this year. That's the priority. We have a facilities improvement plan. Did Brandon leave? Mr. Meyer? He did. So what we're doing with the facilities improvement plan is we have 8 notebooks that detail what the facility needs are. We've taken all that information and we're adding it to one spreadsheet that has all of our facilities and when each of the big improvements need to happen. When does the roof need to be replaced? When do the HVAC systems need to be replaced, so that we see from year to year what that's going to cost us and how it looks like over the next 75 years. I guarantee you I won't be here when 75 years comes along, but that's how far the plan goes out. And then we have our replacement cycle plans. So what we want to be able to show the community is when do we need to replace items, whether it's buses, white fleet, technology, etc. The replacement cycle plans, we had them in departments when they had them, and now we're pulling all that together so that we can show and be very transparent with the community about what those replacement plans are and how they play out over the next few years. Contract management plan, so each of the departments at central office has contracts, whether it's because we contract with Microsoft or all these vendors, and all those contracts sat in different departments. We have pooled all those together into one contract management system where we can sort with Power BI to see what's the contract, who's the vendor, what's the purpose of that, how much are we paying, how long ago did we start that contract, etc. And then 6 months before the contract is up for renewal, it sends, if I'm the contract manager, it sends me a notification to say, Ms. Goyaso, your contract for Microsoft is coming up in 6 months. I start the negotiations with Microsoft, let's say, or I look for another vendor that will give me a comparable product for a less price, for less. And so what we will see is savings over time. I implemented this in my last district. In the first year, we had a $500,000 savings. We have to be able to pull that together and manage it and keep everyone alert about when contracts are up for renewals. And then the last one is the one that I talked about with the citizenship ready plan. And we're developing that right now, filling the assistant superintendent position where Dr. Lawrence was, and that's going to be the primary responsibility of that person and that team to roll out that plan. So I've been here 60 days. There's a lot of work that has happened in those 60 days. And we're going to move forward with beginning to pivot. We're turning the ship in some instances, and just starting to pivot in smaller ways in others, knowing that there are some changes that need to happen. We want to be in a different place at the end of this year and at the end of next year, and we have to be strategic about how we do it, and it begins with everything I've talked about today. So, this is probably the quietest room. Questions? Comments? Are you tired already with all that work that we're doing?
I have one question.
Yes.
You talked about college readiness and that we had areas of opportunity. So what is your vision, goals, priorities to get our kiddos ready for college?
So when we look at the data, 37% of our, 67, almost 68% of our kids are career ready, meaning they have an industry-based certification, etc. 37% of our kids are college ready. So college ready has multiple components: TSI, SAT, ACT. There are lots of things that go with that. And so the plan is we have to align our courses with those assessments first. And I'll give you an example. If you look at TSI is primarily algebra 1. If we're not, and I see people nodding their heads, if we don't offer TSI until their junior year, they're not in an Algebra 1 course anymore. And so how do we begin aligning and preparing students so that they're taking the course and taking those assessments at the same time so that it works for them? They're being tested on the content that we're offering. That's one way. There are other factors that go with that.
What was that percentage again for college?
37. And it sounds low, but here's what I'll tell you is the state is just slightly above that. So it's not like we're lagging, but it's not where we want to be. So just to put it in, I want to put it in perspective because it's not like VISD is so low. We're slightly below the state, but that's not where we want to be. My expectations are very high, personally, but there isn't anything that I wouldn't pick up my sleeves to do, and I think staff knows that. I'm going to get right in there with you to make it happen.
What's the percentage of students that go to college and then graduate?
So we're just pulling that data because I asked for it and it wasn't readily available. NCES reports that. And so they've started to send me the downloads. VC is because they have access to that data portal. It's not where we want it to be. Students that actually transition out of our high school and go into college, and I will get those numbers and we'll publish them.
Yeah, I would assume it's under 37.
37%?
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, you're talking, the 37% you're talking about though, when she says 37%, she means of every student. So the numbers we're going to get is out of that 37%, how many finish college? So you're going to get a percentage of a percentage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And those numbers are not not even going to tell the entire story because
No,
those
they
are
don't.
just the ones that are going to public universities, probably within the state of Texas, if I'm
So
not
it's
mistaken.
public university unless the private school reports
Reports
it.
it, yeah.
And so the numbers also with 37% is meaning that they are ready to go to college, not
Correct.
necessarily that they are going.
That's correct.
So we're getting them ready, but not necessarily that they're actually making that
And it
transition.
could be the opposite, so let me give you an example. It could be that a student didn't pass TSI, but they go to college and they take the college, the remedial course when they're there, that's right, the remedial course, so they still were admitted. So the data gets skewed
Right.
multiple ways. We have to slice and dice it to make sense of it, but we do have those numbers available for us.
Do we know what the state average is on the career ready numbers?
Off the top of my head, I can't
Okay.
remember. Yeah.
Because I do know that it was probably about 15, 18 years ago, the state of Texas made a very strong push
Yes, they did.
for.
However, VISD is above the state on the career side,
Okay,
right below the state on the college
okay.
side.
Because like I said, I distinctly remember being at a conference where the head of the TDA at that time spoke,
Mhm.
and they were specifically pivoting towards vocational education and CTE courses at that time.
Yes.
Could you repeat those numbers one more time, please? 37% college
College
ready, and how much
readiness,
was
68%.
ready?
About almost right under 67 point something, almost 68.
It's almost 100% of students.
But it's not, you can't add it that way because some kids might have their IBC and be college ready too. So it's,
Some of them.
they're correct. You know, what gets measured gets done, we know that, right? And so when the state put pressure on us around CCMR, everybody's CCMR scores started going up. And so that's what we're saying. We're gonna look closely at both of those numbers. And I've been asked, how are we gonna ensure that the career side doesn't drop because we're now focusing on the college side? We have trackers. I mean, we have very, very strong trackers that help us know which students are mastering, and we want students on both sides. You should be college and career ready. Well, I'm excited. There is a lot of work that's already in motion. There are a lot of key players that are helping move this work. Cabinet is right in the middle of all of this right now. And principals have already started rolling the strategic plan out to their campuses as well, to get what are the strengths of this and what are the recommendations. We want to get input from people so that we can make any tweaks necessary before we go to the board with our recommended goals.
I do know that on the college aspect of it, the accountability piece is not there as far as, I do have a child in the PTEC program, and with us only having one resource, and the communication between the high school aspect and the college aspect is so stressful because the college is like, oh, your counselor should do that, and then vice versa. So it's being sent back and forth, and eventually if I was someone who gave up, I wouldn't have proceeded with making sure that my child was on the right path.
Good to know. PTEC is one that we're looking at closely, and I'll give you one example of PTEC. On the nursing side or the medical side track, we have a CMA certification, Certified Medical Assistant. And I'm pushing to say, that's great, let them get that first. They can get the phlebotomy at the same time, which we know they can get. Let's also push to say they're gonna walk away with their LVN and hopefully pursue their RN when they leave Victoria.
But it's,
So
if you bring that up, they say that it's hard.
it is hard.
And we don't have support to get that done, because that's
We
kind
will.
of the path my
I
child
just want
wants.
to speak on, I'm here as a parent, but I actually work at BC.
Right.
We there have seen, and with all of the legislation that has passed for dual credit courses, our executive vice president, our administration actually now has a division that is specifically dual credit. And the dean started in December, and we are rolling it out. She was introduced, I believe, in January. So that is rolling out to kind of have that central location just specific to dual credit programs. PTEC falls under that, to help foster those relationships, because we saw the increase that was coming when it comes to dual credit. Don't quote me, because I'm not here professionally, I'm married. But I am the interim admin for that division, so I do see everything that's happening. So it is to foster those relationships and that communication and to get that going. Because they recognize that what we had needed to be improved on. So it's now its own division as opposed to being recruitment and dual credit. Now they're just strictly dual credit.
And we,
Yeah, just having them pulled in those different directions.
It is very
If
difficult
you
to
are
be able
not
to
on
manage.
it was falling through the cracks, and it's kind of frustrating. For those people who don't have the support, like my children.
Yeah.
so strengthening P-TECH is a big priority for us as well. And then the VC connection, I mean, we're meeting regularly. Dr. Kent has been amazing about saying, tell us what you want to build and we'll work side by side with you to build that. And so we
I am
are
very
grateful for the
excited.
partnership.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I always put on my parent hat on. And my children have a certain support at home. I can do
Right.
certain things for them and help them with certain things. But I didn't have that advocacy, so I'm always like, okay, you know, Elizabeth's gonna come in, she doesn't have me at home. I want her to make sure that she's still getting through and being helped along the way, it doesn't fall through those cracks, you know? So I understand where that kind of frustration ends up coming through.
Other comments, questions?
I did have a question. The reason that I'm here is because a lot of changes are going on, and of course, the buzzword right now with these vouchers. Are we concerned that that's going to impact budgets and this plan?
There are so many versions of what's going to happen out there.
Okay.
Our plan is our plan. Whether we have, right now, we have almost 13,000, regardless how many students we have. We owe it to all our students to work through that plan. What we need is for our legislators to understand that when we look at school vouchers, the amount that's being proposed for school vouchers, and you keep seeing the number 15,000, right? It's that public schools receive 15,000 per student. We don't. We don't. We receive about just over 6,000. We need much more than that to sustain it. They keep talking about, we're gonna get additional funds for special ed, additional funds for safety, additional funds for TIA, all these additional funds. What they haven't truly talked about is our basic allotment, and that's where we need the increase. We need the increase there, and if we're gonna give private schools 10,000, then make our basic allotment 10,000. And I know I'm asking for a lot, but the additional money, private schools are not responsible to serve special ed students. And they say, well, we get 15,000, that includes the special ed money that we receive and some other monies, right? Private schools are not required to do that. So it's not equitable. We need it to be equitable. We need our basic allotment increased. That's a big one. Yes,
So
sir.
you mentioned the increase in funding in, excuse me, in the Senate bill for, I think you said TIA. I think soon you're talking about the
Teacher incentive allotment. Mhm.
And is it your intention that this district should participate in the teacher incentive allotment?
We are already pursuing that. We met with our DEC Friday, and we won't have a choice but to do that. Now, I came from a district where we were part of cohort A, the very, very first cohort. We had teachers that were making six figures with that. And
Could you
so,
talk a little bit about the teacher incentive allotment and how many teachers it impacts.
here,
If you are participating in the teacher incentive allotment, so if you start the process, it takes how many years to
So
become
you-
part of the cohort?
Yeah.
And then how many teachers does it affect? And can you elaborate on why we're going to have no choice but to do teacher incentive allotment?
well, we don't, it's not that we don't have a choice, we have a choice. We need to do it. Every one of our neighboring districts is already offering it. So I can go to a neighboring district, and we have the list of all of the districts, just submitted it recently to the board so that they can look at it. So how long does it take? You submit your application. The application would be submitted in April. It gets approved from now till August, September. You have 1 year of data collection. So all next year, we have to collect the data. And in the following year, they designate based on who we submit for designations. And then they pay out at the end in May for that next year. So it's basically 2 years before teachers would see any money in hand. Technically speaking, it's been designed to reward the top 15% of teachers.
In all subjects?
It depends. So they just say the top 15% of teachers. However, when you submit your application, you submit based on the group of teachers that you're going to use it for. So we may say in the first year, it's going to be our core academic teachers, or it's going to be our CTE teachers, or whatever. To do every teacher is unmanageable. And I'm telling you, because I manage that system as part of cohort A. And we have been doing it ever since. They're in cohort F, I believe now, F or G, one of the two. And so we would have to make decisions about which group of teachers is going to be submitted as part of the first group.
Are all teachers eligible to be submitted,
If we're going to collect data on those groups, yes.
including special ed and other?
Absolutely. Mhm. So there's a misconception about TI is tied to STAR, and it's not. When you submit the designations, you submit the progress measure that you're going to be using. It can be anything from a portfolio to IBCs to whatever it is. It depends on the group that you're talking about, but you have to tell them, this is a group of teachers, this is how we're going to measure growth, and they approve it or not approve it.
Thank you. So question, it's my brain, sorry. So that first question, does that tie back to the institutes that you're having to get some of these teachers more training and all of that? Then that ties into more teacher pay eventually to prepare them for those groups?
Ideally, that's the ultimate outcome, is that we're creating these institutes over the summer, going to provide training all year long to develop teachers so that they're performing at the very highest levels. What we want is the highest effective teacher in front of every group of students in every classroom.
Just to follow up on that.
Yeah.
In your former district, what percentage of your teachers participating in TIA were making 6 figures?
We had about, of the group of about 45 teachers-ish, we had about 3 or 4 that were making 6 figures, and others that were slightly below that.
Total staff was, instructional staff was?
Instructional staff, we were running at about right under 200.
So 45 qualified, 5 or 6 of them making 6 figures. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, we have a QR code here. We'd like your feedback. We can get it one of 2 ways. You can either submit it via your QR code, or Ashley also has some little cards for you to tell us. There you go, Ashley. So just take a couple of minutes just to give us feedback. It's important for us to know how you are feeling, both as staff members, because we have staff members here. The board is also here, and we also have parents. So, well, as we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. Again, I'm always available. Email me, call me, whatever you need. I just definitely, as we start rolling this out, we want your feedback, your input, so that we hear your voice. That's important.